Chronicles of the Grim Reaper, The Birth of Fire and Bone, by Griz Calderon. He had been there before oceans had names, before light found something to shine upon. He had no beginning that he could recall, only the quiet certainty that wherever life began, he would one day be needed. The Grim Reaper moved through the ages like a shadow carved from time itself. His form was neither man nor phantom, but something born of the earth's first silence, a figure draped in darkness that shifted not with the wind, but with the breath of the unseen, eternal and unbound. His cloak did not move because of wind or weather. It stirred as if memory itself passed through it, a faint echo of the lives he had carried. His scythe glimmered faintly with the light of dying stars, not as a weapon, but as a guide for those ready to cross. He had watched the world from the beginning, silent and unseen. He had seen worlds bloom and wither before this one, yet the earth was different. It pulsed with something rare, defiance. Even as creation trembled beneath the weight of chaos, the planet clung to life, as if it knew he was watching. When the sky burned 66 million years ago, he stood upon a ridge of molten stone and felt the heavens shatter. A fireball descended, vast as a mountain, tearing through the clouds before striking the shallow sea. The ground convulsed beneath him, mountains folded like paper, and the air turned to flame. He walked through the storm of ending. Beasts that had ruled the land, Tyrannosaurus rex, Triceratops, Ankylosaurus, staggered and fell beneath a choking sky. Ash blotted out the sun. The world cried in one voice, and he heard it all. He reached for them, not to take, but to comfort. He eased the burning from their lungs, quieted the tremors in their hearts. Where the sea swallowed them, he drew stillness from the water. Where they burned, he carried away their pain. His touch turned agony to calm, fear to peace. One by one, they fell silent in his presence, not in terror, but in release. Beneath a canopy of falling ash, a mother crouched over her hatchlings, her breath slowing as the world darkened. The Reaper knelt beside her, unseen, his presence cooling the fire that tore through her chest. When her eyes dimmed, he gathered what remained, her memory, her devotion, and carried it so her young would not vanish unremembered. When the last echo faded, he stood in the stillness of smoke and cinder. The horizon glowed with the red of a wounded sun. He lowered his head, feeling the weight of so many souls gathered in his care. "Rest," he whispered to the ruins. "This is not the end." Time began again. Years blurred into millennia, and millennia into millions. The world softened, mending its wounds in the quiet rhythm of rebirth. Where once there was ash, green returned. Oceans cleared, and coral grew in the shallows like new hope taking shape. He moved through fields of ferns that rose from the bones of the old world, his steps leaving no mark. 50 million years passed. Life, fragile and patient, filled the silence. Small creatures darted between roots and shadows, survivors of extinction carrying the memory of thunder in their blood. He felt the pulse of their existence, timid yet unyielding. In a grove newly born from cooling earth, he found one such creature, a tiny fur-covered survivor trembling beneath a fern. It looked up once before closing its eyes, heart fluttering like a fading ember. The Reaper waited beside it until the trembling stopped, his unseen hand resting lightly above its stillness. When he left, the forest felt quieter, as if the world itself had paused to remember. From the depths of the ocean, he sensed warmth rising through cracks in the seafloor. There, near the molten heart of the earth, creatures adapted to fire instead of fleeing from it. Scales thickened, lungs strengthened, and life began to shape itself anew from what had survived destruction. He followed that pulse through the ages, drawn by something ancient and familiar, a rhythm that spoke of change. In time, he found it. Amid the mist of a volcanic valley, a creature struggled from an egg the size of a boulder. Its scales shimmered with the faint glow of heat, its wings unfurling like molten glass cooling in the wind. It breathed, and smoke rose from its nostrils, not in fury, but as a remnant of the world that had birthed it. He stood perfectly still. The air vibrated with creation's heartbeat. This was no ordinary birth. It was the universe rewriting its own ending. The Reaper had witnessed countless beginnings, yet none like this. The creature's gaze met his, ancient and new all at once, and the silence between them felt like the first prayer ever spoken. The first dragon had been born. The Reaper stood still as the creature took its first unsteady steps, tilting its head toward the sky that had once destroyed all that came before. For a moment, he thought it looked at him, and the space between them seemed to hold the breath of the world itself. He had witnessed the birth of countless beings through the ages, yet never one like this. There was something ancient in its eyes, something that remembered the fire before memory itself. The air trembled with life returning to the places death had ruled, and even the wind seemed to pause in reverence. This was no ordinary birth. It was the world rewriting its own ending. The first dragon had been born, and as it raised its head toward the heavens, the Reaper felt the faint echo of what was to come, the thunder of wings, the rise of a new age, and the enduring promise that life, no matter how many times it was taken, would always find a way back. Dragons were not born of magic, but of endurance. They were the children of survival, the bridge between what had perished and what refused to die. He walked among them as the world aged. Some took to the sea, vast and sinuous, their bodies glowing faintly in the deep where light could not reach. Others ruled the mountains, carving nests into cliffs where the air was thin and cold. A few soared above the clouds, their wings scattering sunlight into rainbows across the peaks. To him, they were not beasts, but guardians of a promise, that life would always find a way. When one fell, exhausted by centuries, he knelt beside it. His touch cooled their scales. His presence eased the fire within. Their souls left quietly, carried into the wind like embers fading into night. He once found a young dragon tangled in the roots of a collapsing cliff, its wing shattered, its breath shallow. The Reaper touched the edge of its thought, fear, pain, and the fading memory of the sky. He freed it from the stone's weight, and lifted its soul with the same care he had given the smallest creature eons before. Above them, thunder rumbled, not from storm, but from wings greeting one of their own. The earth shifted again. Ice crept from the poles and blanketed the land. 2 million years ago, the great beasts of fur and tusk walked across frozen plains. He watched the mammoth take its final breath beneath the aurora, and guided its spirit toward warmth. The world slowed, but never stopped. One mammoth lingered longer than the rest, unwilling to leave her calf. The Reaper placed his hand upon her brow. Frost melted where his fingers hovered. The calf stirred, then stilled, as both slipped quietly from the cold into the warmth beyond. When the ice receded, another creature rose, frail, curious, restless. Humanity. They feared the dark and chased it with fire. They built shelters, then cities, then empires, and through it all, he remained. invisible but ever present. He eased the suffering of those who died too soon. He stood at the edge of battlefields and felt the ground quake with grief. He guided kings and beggars alike, for death did not discriminate. Each soul he touched found calm. Each departure met with silence rather than fear. He met the first man to die by another's hand. The killer trembled, staring at what he had done, and in that moment, the Reaper stood between them. He took the fallen one gently, then turned to the living. The man could not see him, yet felt a weight lift, a sorrow he could not name. The Reaper knew humanity's path had changed forever. He saw humanity look upward, always upward, searching for gods, for meaning, for light. None knew that the same ancient figure who once eased the dying of dinosaurs now stood beside them, patient as ever, watching the world learn to dream. Then, 1,000 years ago, he felt a familiar presence stirring. Dragons, the old survivors, had slept for centuries high in the mountains, where clouds hid their nests. But mankind's hunger had grown. They sailed farther, climbed higher, reaching lands and skies once untouched. The Reaper followed as curiosity turned to fear. The first men to glimpse wings above the clouds told stories of monsters, and fear gave birth to legends. When a dragon descended to defend its territory, they called it an omen. When it breathed flame, they called it evil. He stood between them as the first battle began, men below with weapons drawn, dragons above with hearts burning from loss. Fire met steel, and the world trembled once again. He moved through the smoke, gathering the fallen. To the dragons he offered peace, cooling their seared scales and whispering of the world that had once been theirs. To the humans he granted stillness, lifting the fear from their eyes before darkness claimed them. Neither were enemies in his gaze, only life, struggling in different forms. Among the fallen lay a young slayer, his sword still clutched in trembling hands. The Reaper knelt, touching the boy's fading thoughts, regret, wonder, and the image of a dragon's eye that had looked almost human. He eased the boy's passing, knowing that both sides had lost something the world would not soon regain. And so began the Age of Slayers, men who believed that by destroying dragons they were protecting the world, never knowing those very creatures had once safeguarded it. When the battle ended, silence returned. The Reaper stood among the ashes, and for a moment he thought he saw the shadow of the past, the echo of that first extinction reflected in this one. But then the wind rose, carrying with it the scent of new growth. Even here, life stirred. He looked to the sky. Far above, a dragon moved through the clouds, wings glinting in the sun, calling softly to others beyond the horizon. They were not gone, only hidden, waiting for a world wise enough to see them as more than myth. 66 million years had passed since the world first burned, yet still it endured. From ruin came life. From death came renewal. He had seen countless beginnings and endings, yet he knew now that they were the same thing, two breaths of the same eternal rhythm. The air around him shimmered, not from heat or wind, but from the gentle motion of his own presence. He did not move with the world. The world moved around him. Below, the realm of men glowed with restless fire. Above, the heavens whispered of what once was. He walked on, his scythe glimmering faintly with the light of the sun, a reminder that even in endings, something always survived. And somewhere beyond the clouds, dragons soared, keepers of the ancient fire, waiting to be remembered. The end.